Most people don't realize that their rights are being violated until it's too late. Imagine this. You walk into a job interview, you're nervous but prepared, and you're asked something like this. Where are you originally from? How many kids do you have? And what was your salary at your last job? You answer these questions trying to be polite and not ruin your chances. But here's the truth. Those questions might have already cost you the job, and they never should have been asked in the first place. Today, we're breaking down the most common interview questions that are illegal and what you can do to protect yourself. The goal of this video is to give you information so you can decide how you want to respond to these types of questions. With that in mind, let's dive in. For most of American history, there were almost no protections as it relates to the hiring process. If an employer didn't like your race, gender, or anything about you, they could legally refuse to hire you, and they didn't have to hide it. It wasn't just culture. It was written into the very letter of the law. Until the early 1960s, discrimination in the workplace was legal, and Jim Crow laws were widespread. Jim Crow laws legalized segregation in almost all aspects of public life, and denied rights to not only African Americans, but many other races as well. This was the world leading up to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was one of the most powerful legal shifts in U.S. history. On June 11th, 1963, President Kennedy pleaded with not only Congress, but also the American people to support the Civil Rights Act. The efforts of President Kennedy, as well as many other people, the Civil Rights Act was passed into law, but sadly, after his tragic death. The Civil Rights Act was massive in scope. It outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. While the Civil Rights Act didn't fix everything, it broke the legal backbone of discrimination in this country. And it opened the door for many other laws that protected not only women, the disabled, and many other people as well. It also redefined what freedom and equality meant in America. You might be asking yourself that all of this sounds nice, but how is this going to help me during a job interview? Well, I'm glad you asked, because today we're going to be focusing on these protections separately and the types of questions that might come up. Even today, some people believe that they can get away with racial discrimination in the hiring process. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not. But what they don't want you to know is that it is illegal and you have rights. Two of those rights is to be free from both race and color discrimination. Under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, it is illegal for an employer to discriminate against you on the basis of your skin color or race. Legally speaking, this type of discrimination occurs when you are treated differently because of your race or your skin color. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, has already provided guidance on what it considers to be both race and color. This commission enforces and ensures all anti-discrimination laws are being followed. The commission has said that a person's race includes any form of discrimination on the basis of ancestry, physical or cultural characteristics associated with one's race, such as skin color, hair texture, or styles, as well as certain physical features. Whereas color is defined as skin pigmentation, complexion, shade, or tone. You should also be aware that these protections apply to your spouse's skin color and race as well. This rule prevents an interviewer from refusing to give you a job because they don't like your spouse's race or color. With this guidance in mind, you might be asking yourself two questions. The first is, do these protections apply if the interviewer is the same race or color as I am? And the answer to that question is yes. You have the same rights as if the person was a different color or race than you. The second question you might be asking is, can the interviewer even ask about my race? The EEOC has already answered this question and said that federal law does not prohibit employers from asking you about your race. However, in the eyes of the EEOC, questions about race and color are not just evidence of discrimination. They're actually presumed to be asked for an improper reason as well. Potential employers also can't ask for a photograph of you as a way to circumvent these rules. However, a photograph may be obtained after an offer of employment is made and accepted by you. Clearly, the EEOC and federal law take these types of questions very seriously. With this information in mind, you should pay close attention when there's any questions that relate to your race or skin color. Now let's talk about national origin and citizenship status. The Civil Rights Act also prohibits any form of discrimination as it relates to a person's national origin. National origin discrimination occurs when you're treated differently because you're from a particular country or part of the world. This type of discrimination can also be based on a person's physical, cultural, or language characteristics. Because language is protected, a person cannot be discriminated against because they have an accent or they don't speak English fluently. The only exception is if the employer can show three things. The first being that fluency in English is necessary to perform the job effectively. The second is that this English-only rule is needed to ensure the safe or efficient operation of the employer's business. And 3, it is put in place for a non-discriminatory reason. The EEOC has clarified that any accent or language restrictions must seriously and materially interfere with an employee's job performance to be legal. One thing you should consider is how national origin can overlap with citizenship status. The Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, the IRCA for short, makes it illegal for an employer to discriminate against you on the basis of your immigration status. As a result, any job posting or interview question that demands or requires only U.S. citizens apply are illegal. The U.S. Department of Justice has even given some examples of citizenship requirements that are illegal. Now that we've discussed national origin and citizenship status, let's look at religious discrimination. The Civil Rights Act also prohibits any form of discrimination based on a person's religion or their religious beliefs. Federal law states that a person's religion covers all aspects of a religious practice or belief, even if it's not required by the particular religion that the person is following. For a belief to be religious, it only needs to be sincere and meaningful to the person. Specific examples of religious practices include attending worship services, praying, wearing religious clothing and symbols, as well as many other activities. You should be aware that the law protects all sincerely held religious beliefs and not just those of the major religions. This is true even if you or no other people adhere to it. Now that we've discussed religion, let's talk about discrimination based on a person's sex. The Civil Rights Act also prohibits any form of discrimination based on a person's sex, and the scope of this protection is very broad under federal law. Historically, questions about marital status and children were frequently used to discriminate against women in the workplace. This is why the EEOC states that these types of questions are usually evidence of an intent to discriminate. Such questions include whether you are pregnant, married, or plan to marry, number of children that you have, and your child care arrangements, as well as many others. If any of these questions get brought up in an interview, you should be immediately skeptical and calculated in not only your approach, but also your response. Now we go on to discrimination based on age. Despite the broad scope of the Civil Rights Act, it didn't go far enough to protect people. So Congress stepped in to solve this problem. In 1967, Congress passed the Age Discrimination in Employment Act to protect workers who are 40 years and older from discrimination because of their age. Because of this protection, the EEOC states that interviewers should avoid asking questions about a person's age unless they're used to verify that the applicant meets any age-related requirements for the job. This also means that the Act makes it illegal to include any age preferences, limitations, or specifications in a job notice or advertisement. Examples of illegal job postings would be anything that says that they're looking for ages 25 to 35 or recent college graduates. The only exception to this rule is an employer who is seeking to hire somebody who is 40 years old or older. For example, an employer can say that they're looking for somebody who is over 50 years old or retirees. If you're asked about your age during a job interview, the EEOC will likely view this as evidence of intent to discriminate against you. In fact, the EEOC states that such inquiries will be closely scrutinized to ensure that they are for a lawful purpose. Now that we've finished discussing age, we're going to focus now on disability discrimination next. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, an employer cannot ask you any question about a disability that you might have. The only exception to this rule is to see if you need a reasonable accommodation for an obvious or voluntarily disclosed disability. An employer also can't ask you about your family's medical history because to do so would violate GINA, which is also known as the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008. These protections are now more important than ever because the United States has more people with disabilities than it ever has in its modern history. The most current data reveals that almost 29% of Americans report having either a physical or mental disability. You need to be aware that these rules can change after you're offered a job. If you're offered a job, an employer can ask you about your disabilities and require that you undergo a medical examination, as long as all employees are required to do so. Because of this, you should be cautious if you're asked anything about your health or disabilities before a job offer. Now we're going to be talking about our last topic for this video: salary history bans. While no federal law stops employers from asking you about your salary history, some states do. As of now, more than 20 states and cities have passed laws that prevent employers from asking you how much you made at your previous jobs. Because this protection depends on where you live or where the job is located, you should always check your state and local laws before interviewing. If you've made it this far, you might be asking yourself, what do I need to do if I'm asked any of these illegal interview questions? First, an illegal interview question is a huge red flag. If this happens, you need to determine whether this was asked out of curiosity or with ulterior motives. Remember, you don't have to answer an interview question. You can always steer the conversation back to your qualifications. And after the interview, you can either let it go, or if you feel like your rights have been violated, you can always report the incident to the EEOC. If you believe that the question was innocent, you can always answer even though you legally don't have to. If a question feels inappropriate or illegal, document it. Write down who said it, what was said, and when it occurred, because you will need this information if you decide to report it later on. If you believe you've been the victim of discrimination of any kind, you need to talk to a qualified lawyer in your state to handle it. The EEOC also provides you with all of its districts to help you with filing a claim. After watching this video, I hope you have a better understanding of some of the most common illegal job interview questions that you might face and what to do if you encounter them. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like, subscribe, and share it with somebody that you believe could benefit from it. I would really appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next video.